If civil war comes, and I do think it is imminent, you're quite right, it will for us be the price of freedom. Our people here have for a long time been prepared for this eventuality, and I am confident of their readiness. I think that when it does come, the people on the other side would be surprised as to what they're going to get. And I'm confident that it will not last long.
Before the flames, there were whispers. Before the war, there were wounds. Long before the first bullet was fired, the seeds of secession were sown. Not in the heat of battle, but in the cold, calculated betrayals of history. They called it a union. A forced marriage of nations stitched together by empire, bound by ink but divided by blood. The East, proud, resilient, the heartbeat of a people who once knew freedom before the world tore it away. Independence came, but not liberation. Democracy, but not justice. And when the pogroms began, when the streets ran red with Igbo blood, the East knew no one was coming to save them. And so they chose war. When Nigeria gained independence from Britain in 1960, it inherited not just a nation, but, a patchwork of ethnic and regional divisions. The north was dominated by the Hausa and the Fulani, the west by the Yoruba, and the east by the Igbo.
Things came to a head when on January 15, 1966, a group of southern young officers, led by Major Kaduna Nzogu, toppled the government. They claimed they were fighting corruption, but the killings of northern and western leaders made it look like an ethnic purge, killing key leaders from the north, including the Sadwana of Sokoto, but sparing Igbo politicians like Nnamdi Azikiwe in the poorly executed coup. These fueled northern suspicions of an Igbo plot. 6 months later, a counter-coup followed and northern officers struck back. General Ironsi, Nigeria's first military ruler, was murdered. Again, thousands of Igbos and their officers were massacred in pogroms in northern Nigeria. Fearing for their lives, many Igbos fled home to the eastern region. With tensions escalating, both sides met in January 1967 in Aburi, Ghana, hoping to negotiate peace, which they did, or so it seemed. But when they returned home, things fell apart. Nigeria's federal government interpreted the agreement differently, and honestly, they ultimately failed to implement it. Trust was broken. The Aburi Accord could have saved millions, but instead, it became the final straw. On May 30, 1967, Ojukwu declared the Republic of Biafra. For many Igbos, it was about survival, but Nigeria called it treason. What followed was war, a bitter, drawn-out battle. While Biafra had spirit and heart, Nigeria had numbers, resources, and international recognition. As the Biafran War intensified, so did the horror. This wasn't just a distant African conflict anymore, it was a televised humanitarian catastrophe. Prominent figures across the globe raised their voices, demanding action and support for Biafra. Joan Baez and Jimi Hendrix didn't just speak out, they played concerts, raising crucial funds and awareness. Music icon John Lennon returned his MBE, Member of the Order of the British Empire, medal to Queen Elizabeth II in 1969, a rejection of Britain's support for Nigeria. On the ground reporting the brutal truth was Frederick Forsyth, who was one of Biafra's most vocal advocates. His book, The Biafra Story, exposed the scale of the humanitarian crisis, and challenged the official narratives. A young Jewish student named Bruce Mayrock doused himself in flames on the lawns of the United Nations. His fiery protest was a scream for a people he had never met, and probably history might otherwise forget. For 3 years, Nigeria fought to reclaim Biafra. The East resisted fiercely, but starvation became their deadliest enemy. The Nigerian military imposed a blockade that starved Biafra. Over 1 million died, mostly civilians, while foreign powers took sides. Britain, Soviet Union, Egypt, etc., backed Nigeria. Biafra was backed by France and many mercenaries from Belgium, Portugal, South Africa, and Rhodesia. Israel initially, but switched support when Nigeria threatened to recognize Palestine. While the people paid the price, international aid poured in, but it wasn't enough. By the time Biafra surrendered in January 1970, over 1 million people had died, most from starvation. After the war, Nigeria declared, "No victor, no vanquished." But the wounds didn't just vanish. Decades later, groups like IPOB still raise the Biafran flag, reminding us that the conflict's legacy lives on, in politics, in culture, and in memory. The Nigerian Biafran War was a collision of identities, a desperate cry for justice, and a lesson in failed diplomacy. Today, Nigeria stands as one nation, yet the spectre of Biafra still haunts its collective memory. Many ask, were the war's hard lessons truly learned, or have they faded into the echoes of history? History repeats when it is forgotten. The story of Biafra is not just Nigeria's past, it is a warning for its future. What if there was no independence? What if there'd been no war at all? What if the Aburi Accord had worked? What if there was no coup? What if the killings of Igbos had stopped? The what-ifs are just infinite. We remember those who died as a result of the Nigerian Biafran Civil War, and we honor the victims of the Asaba massacre whose stories must never be forgotten.